On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, tonight the Toronto Raptors embark upon the second quarter of their NBA season, and oh, what a pivotal quarter of the season it figures to be.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, December the 6th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that don't work so good at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can hang out in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great place to be, whether it's a game day for the Raptors, whether it's an in-season tournament night, whether it's an off day for the Raptors, of which there have been many of late. It's a great place to be. Come hang out with all the little sickos just like you in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast, and it's free to join. Would love to see you in there. Of course, you can also find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Hit the little notification bell on YouTube, and you will never miss an episode when it premieres. You don't want to be missing episodes. You want to be an everydayer. You want to be there in the nitty-gritty, in the chat, all that good stuff when the show goes live. Thanks in advance for doing that. And thanks today for Game Time, or to Game Time, for bringing you today's show. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And we are off and running here to talk about Q2 for the Toronto Raptors. The next 20 or so games figure to be very, very pivotal for the future direction of the franchise as the trade deadline draws ever closer. And here to tee up the next 20 or so games for the Toronto Raptors and players that we're going to be watching, team trends of note, and the general stakes at play here for the Raptors is the wonderful Katie Heindl from Dime and Basketball Feelings. Katie, how the hell are you?
I'm good. Got a nice new ambient light source in the living room, which is the Christmas tree. Set that guy up last night. Feeling good.
I think, Katie, I'm going to start setting up my Christmas tree, maybe just for the lights, not even with the decorations, the day the clocks go back in November. Yeah. It feels like a replacement for sunlight that you just kind of go without for a whole month after the clocks go back for some reason. Just the most miserable decision humankind has ever made. So yeah, maybe that's the solution. I too love my ambient source of light in the living room. It's not in here with me. I should probably get a tree for while I podcast to make me more gleeful while I do that as well. But happy to hear that the Christmas tree is doing its job. Katie, big show today. The Toronto Raptors play tonight against the Miami Heat. Kyle Lowry in town. That's always fun. No Bam Adebayo, no Tyler Hero. So, we'll see. The Heat still very annoying, hard to play against, etc. Won't be an easy one, I'm sure. But it's the first of the next 20 or so games here that we're going to kind of focus in on today. It's a big time for the Toronto Raptors. Michael Grange writing a piece yesterday. Not really any surprises necessarily, but digging in over at Sportsnet to what lies ahead for the Raptors here in the next 20 games, who, of course, are 9-11 so far. Very much a 500-ish team, as they were last season, even if the look and feel and general enjoyment level has been much different than last year. Let's just kind of go big picture here, Katie. We'll get into specific players, team trends we're watching, but these next 20 games, the deadline obviously looming a little bit beyond the 20-game, the 41-game cutoff, I suppose, once you get to the half of the season. But these feel pretty important, do they not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at the schedule, they're important and they're also pretty winnable, I'd say. I'd even say like some of the tougher matchups are pretty winnable, considering that the Raptors seem to be now playing up pretty consistently and do their best work against better teams. So I'd actually say kind of some of like the mid-level / like lower level matchups might actually be more of a slog.
A couple of Hornets games coming up. It'll be nasty.
And like, not to pair the Hawks with the Hornets, but I just think that's another team that would kind of give them some trouble. Sure. But yeah, like I think the next stretch is going to be pretty telling for what they want to do. Granted, like this is always a good time of year energy-wise still. They are officially out of the in-season tournament. They are kind of like left out of all that. I wonder also what that is going to do with like I don't know, will it recalibrate their focus? Are they going to feel left out of all the excitement? I'm not sure.
I do wonder if just like the 4 days off to kind of regroup, take stock, have a couple of practices, which of course, when you play 8 games in 13 nights, like they had just come off of, you're not getting a ton of practice time. I wonder if we'll see some new wrinkles start to get incorporated, some different lineup combinations, maybe the long discussed starting lineup shakeup is ahead of us sometime in the next 20 games here. I guess it all comes down to the deadline, right? And what the Raptors are going to decide to do when it comes to Pascal Siakam, O.G. Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. We know the deal by now. Pending free agents galore on this team. And, I think, look, did we kind of do this last year? Similar situation, pending UFAs, kind of a middling to bad start to the season. The next stretch of games really kind of important for, gleaning information and all this stuff. And then, of course, they gleaned all that information and then got Jakob Poeltl, which made a lot of people very mad. I guess, what do you think over the next 20 games here is the thing that you're most looking for to sort of indicate there's something here? Like, yes, this is like a group you can go forward with, because obviously it's looking record-wise stagnant compared to last year. Like we talked about, I think it's very different in terms of the way it's happening. As Pascal Siakam said and was quoted in this Michael Grange piece, it's not like anything's bad. It's just nothing feels amazing. It's like a perfect encapsulation of, I think, a lot of people's mental states and also the Toronto Raptors. What do you think like we need to see here in order for you to be like, you know what, there's something here worth keeping around?
That's a great quote, and forever applicable. I think consistency with that core, with the people that are in question and the people that seem to have pretty consistently been in question the last couple seasons, because of either their play and their contracts. So, yeah, I think consistency between Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes, and O.G. Anunoby all together on the floor, I think, is sort of like will be the biggest telling factor, and I think is what Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri have kind of been looking at all along, because of course when you get games like that Phoenix Suns win, you're like, oh yeah, this makes complete and total sense, and like this is the team that we want to carry forward with. But then that at least so far this season has been the rarity, all 3 of those guys showing up. So I mean, that's what they're looking at. It's a tough thing to predict, and I think it's even tougher when all parties involved understand the stakes, right? They know that's what they're looking at. Sometimes you can't force it. Sometimes forcing it makes it harder, makes it worse. But I mean, I'd say that like maybe that's the thing that was perhaps missing in past seasons or past iterations of this conversation is it's very clear to the people involved, what's on the line and what they have to do to show. It's so silly because it's like they have to like prove they want to stay when they've said they want to stay all along, but to show that they can work and like they can work together if they do stay. So that's all they have to do, which sounds so easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know some things, right, that I don't think are going to tangibly change. Like we know the fit between those 3 main guys and Jakob Poeltl, for example. Not perfect. That said, Jakob Poeltl been very good. He has his place on this team. But I do think that those core 3 dudes are really the focus here, right? And ultimately, the decision I think is going to come down to, is it 2 of them or is it 3 of them? I think, and I think there's arguments both ways. I know lots of folks are just like, trade Pascal, get some depth, all that stuff. I tend to sort of skew towards keep the really talented players and, bank on the talent and figure out the rest later. But, reasonable people can disagree about the direction here. I do think the nice thing is, as we've, been in this cycle of kicking the can down the road for many years, it does feel like the road is ending because of the finality of having both Siakam and O.G. on pending UFA contracts. They simply cannot go through the deadline with both of those guys their future's not in some way sorted out, whether it's an extension for Pascal or like a handshake agreement that they're going to sign a deal with Pascal, knowing what they're going to pay OG, et cetera, or trading Pascal for whatever you can get for Pascal, which I think, prepare yourself for it not to be all that thrilling, Raptors fans out there. And this is why, again, I'm kind of more on the side of keep the really good player, but that's just me. I'm a dumb guy who thinks good players are a good thing in the NBA, as unlike many people seemingly. But that's what it all comes down to here. And look, those three guys, plus 20.2 net rating, the three of them without Jakob Poeltl on the floor. It's a plus 3.6, just those three guys in general, which maybe isn't quite promising enough or positive enough for you to say, yes, this is a guaranteed trio you got to bank on. But I do think there's still stuff to learn about that group, which I think is important here. Yes, we've been in the information gathering phase for a very long time, but also the Scottie Barnes of it all has changed the context of the team. So we're really only 20 games into this sort of new reality. And the next 20 games will be a very useful 100% addition on top of the current sample we have of this version of Scottie Barnes. We'll come back to this side. Speaking of Scottie Barnes, speaking of interesting players, Katie, we're going to talk about the players over the next 20 games that we are most interested in keeping tabs on. We will do that in just 1 second. But first off, speaking of keeping tabs on players, it's time for our partners at eBay Motors to bring you the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Guaranteed Fits of the Week. Of course, our partners over at eBay Motors have been teaming up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each and every week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. First off, the people in the Locked On Raptors Listener League, cover your ears right now. You don't need any help. I need to beat you guys, but the rest of you keep on listening. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. It's a handful of guys here. Patrick Williams, Kelly Oubre Jr., about to return from injury, Derek Lively II, but I am going to highlight one, Obi Toppin, because the Indiana Pacers are the coolest team to watch in the league right now, and Obi Toppin is banging threes, playing no defense, just lighting it up, playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton. You should be going to check out Obi Toppin to see if he's available on your waiver wire to help you out. And of course, he's going to Vegas, baby. You're going to get the Vegas bump from Obi Toppin this week if you can add him to your team. Josh Lloyd for Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you with your winning your fantasy basketball championship all season long. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. The same goes for your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make your ride or die, make sure your ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Okay, we continue on here. Your first listen of the day. Katie Heindl is here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to our everydayers. A reminder, Locked On Sports 24/7 is the brand new, first of its kind 24/7 streaming channel full of Locked On podcasts, the national shows, the local shows covering the biggest stories every day, all over there on the Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel, which you will be directed to at the end of the show if you're watching on YouTube, and the premiere at least. And you should go subscribe over there. It's great. Okay, Katie, let's dive in. Most interesting guys over the next 20 games or so here. Who you got your eyes on? Who are you fascinated by to kind of see, where their stock is going up or down within this Raptors team? Who you got? Just throw a guy out there.
I think probably Precious Achiuwa first.
Okay.
Because he's shown flashes so far this season. When he's looked good, he's looked great. When he's looked bad, it's been the same kind of problems as seasons of the past. Some of this I do still want to chalk up to consistent minutes and playing time. Granted, he'll probably have to get a sense of having better footing under him when he gets to play, because if this rotation is going to be so deep, it's not going to be set how many minutes he gets, in any given game. But I still really root for Precious Achiuwa. And I think in the flashes he does show, he is what the team could use, when he can
swings
shoot
games for them when he's good.
When he can shoot, when he can be a real momentum kind of energy shifter. When he kind of, locks in and is with it defensively, because you can't really forget his size, which sometimes I think he does. But yeah, like I'm kind of curious because I think there's still a place for him on the team, but I wonder, as we're talking about rumblings of, trades and what does like a potential package look like, I think his name will probably be floated. So I would like him to stay.
I think that's a great call because, look, we focus so much on the Pascal and O.G. of it all, but there are other guys playing to be part of the long-term plans here and whatever the Scottie Barnes era is going to look like. And Precious Achiuwa doesn't have a contract for next year right now. He is very much one of those guys. Obviously it seems like he's carved out the pretty clear role as like the seventh man in the rotation. And, again, that has its ups and downs for sure. The poster coaster running wild all over the place. We love it. We wouldn't want it any other way, although it would be nice if he could just be consistently really good for a while. But yeah, I think watching how Precious can kind of, I think I'm really interested when it comes to how he potentially becomes an agent to fit into these lineups with Scottie, Pascal, and O.G. The shooting obviously is waxed and waned. He's at like 26% this season. It always feels better than that when it goes up. And then, it's a lot of bricks and air balls along with just beautiful buttery swishes, mixed in between a quarter of the time. But like if there's an avenue here where Precious can be the fifth guy alongside, Dennis plus the three big guys, then maybe that's an avenue, A, to the Raptors' whole thing working and being viable, and B, to Precious being a guy who they want to keep around for the long term. Like that's really interesting to me. I think I've kind of seen enough of the Scottie plus 4 bench guy lineups or anyone plus 4 bench guy lineups. But if Precious pops, like he makes those lineups a little bit more effective as well. Right. And so, yeah, watching him, I think there's sort of maybe a growing contingent of the fan base that's out on Precious, which, hey, like if you want consistent basketball, I understand why you might be a little dubious of the Precious Achiuwa experiment. But this next 20 games, yeah, it's not just Pascal, O.G., Scottie that you're kind of keeping an eye on here. It is 100% Precious Achiuwa, really big part of it. I love that call, Katie. I'm looking at Pascal Siakam, though. Like, look, I know this is the rube who loves Pascal Siakam and wants Pascal Siakam to be on the Raptors for a long time. Sue me. I'm an idiot. Whatever. I think these next 20 games, the sort of, his own individual stuff, the 3-point shooting in particular, that's got to come up. He's shooting 19% or just under 20% from 3 on the season. Really bad. And if that is just what he is now, then yeah, the long-term fit with him and Scottie Barnes and O.G. Anunoby is weird and probably too untenable to figure out. I also don't think he's a 19.8% 3-point shooter. I feel like there's going to be a breaking of the dam of some sorts here coming up. And, how much that dam breaks, will it be the dam at Isengard just like washing through and ruining Saruman's plots? Or will it be just kind of a little dribble where it's not quite the gushing volume that you want from the 3-point?
Are you getting into Lord of the Rings Christmas rewatches? Is that what we got?
It's been a couple years, Katie. And
okay.
I'm gonna throw myself back in. It used to be an annual holiday thing, and then I kind of wore myself out on it because I'm just steeped in the extended versions way too much. But
oh, dude, no.
Yeah, you gotta watch the extended.
No,
version.
We've had this argument before. I just remembered.
I know we have, but there's so much good stuff.
I refuse. No,
versions and a lot of bad stuff too. Anyway. Where was I? Pascal. Yeah. So the individual stuff. And then I also think just sort of the interplay between him and Scottie is a thing to watch here over the next 20 games as well. I actually think last 5 or 6 games, it's looked pretty good. It's looked like they are figuring out how to, leverage one another to create successful offense. And yes, sometimes they're limited by the lack of space around them. And that's a challenge. But I think if they can continue to display that they can kind of do the, Pascal will have his pockets of the game, but Scottie kind of takes over. I think that Suns game was kind of the perfect version of what this looks like, right? Where Siakam cooks while the matchup is asking for it. and then Scottie can kind of go into God mode in the fourth quarter and be the closer that Pascal Siakam has sometimes struggled being in the past. So I think there's still a workable chemistry between those two to be found here, but it's got to work really well over these next 20 games, or I'm not sure it's something the Raptors can go and say, you know what, we can invest in this for the next 5 years. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. Again, I continue to think the problem with this team is not the really good players, but it's the players around them and the fit that, is a result of that. But where are you at with Pascal over this next little stretch? What are you watching for?
No, I'm with you. I guess that makes me a rube, but I think, in terms of the team moving forward, they haven't really explored, like, sorry, I'm going to, there's nothing about you or the show.
It's just, you're thinking about the extended versions of
Lord of the Rings. Yeah, just like, there's so much more talking. No, like when we talk about this team moving forward, if the idea is it moves forward under Scottie Barnes only, there hasn't even been. I don't know what that looks like competently. It doesn't look better right away. Like it looks actually a lot worse. So
it's growing painy for sure.
Yeah, and
kind of bereft of.
I would argue that's what the 2.5 seasons have been. Right? Is like full of growing pains and bereftness at times. So I think the argument to keep Pascal makes more sense until you feel confident in Scottie Barnes, like in being the guy that you want to take things forward with. You feel confident in your new coach, having like a firm footing and understanding of who he has and like what he can do. We don't have that yet. So it's not just for stability, like it's also for ability. You end up winning a lot less games without Pascal Siakam's contributions. Like 100%. Whether there are some nights he seems quiet. I think of what an old quiet night from Pascal, used to look like scoring wise, and it's leaps and bounds from where it is now. Now we're like, 22 to 25 points. Seems like a slow night for him, right? Where there were, I remember when it's like 7 points or like sub 10. Yeah. So I think you've got to be realistic about the fact that, you want to move forward and you want to make a decision. And I think everyone is very much like there and has been there for a while, certainly within the fan base. But for what? Like it has to make sense, and it has to actually shore up the future and not just give you more of the same.
Yeah, this is like my whole thing with the Pascal trade is like, what are you getting for Pascal Siakam to improve your station? And if it's like a couple of middling picks and, meh prospects, I don't think that actually improves your station when you currently employ Scottie Barnes, who is already in year 3. The clock is always ticking with star players. Like it just, to me, feels like, a tear down to the studs for the sake of tearing down to the studs, because that's the conventional way to build basketball teams. Whereas, the Raptors don't do it that way. It's a thing I respect about them. And I think I understand the sort of angst about, they're still deciding. Really? What more information do they need? Like, I mean, they're here now. Yes, they probably should have made some decisions in the offseason and bit the bullet on something or whatever. But now they're here. You might as well take the time at your disposal to get all the information you can under the new context of the team, which is Scottie Barnes is the lead guy. And I think that's pretty unquestionable at this point. Use the time at your disposal here between now and the deadline to figure out what needs figuring out. And, a little patience, a little bit of, I think, kind of belief in the process of just kind of watching things play out over the course of a half season or so. There's value in that. And I think the Raptors are right to not be like, December 15th is here, must do trade now. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. Katie, we'll come back to their side. We will get into the team trends we want to watch over the next little while here as well. Will the defense get better? Will the starting lineup change? We'll talk about that and more coming up in just one sec. But first, got to tell you, better good friends over at Game Time, the single best place to go and buy tickets for your next sporting event. And right now, it's the holiday season. What better way to show someone you love them and to buy tickets to an event that you want to go to with them? There, I said it. Yeah, I'm really good at this whole talking thing. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You get killer last minute deals. You get all in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with all of those wonderful features. Raptors play plenty of games over the holidays. I'm sure there's a home game or two mixed in around the holiday season. You want to go with a loved one to a game, get them gifts. It's honestly the best gift to buy somebody. It's a gift that you also get to take part in. It's awesome. So go to Game Time, find yourself some tickets for a Raptors game or any other event that might be coming up. Go to Game Time right now. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, rounding it out here, Katie Heindl here to get into some team trends to watch. We talked about individual players, but at large, Katie, what's popping out to you as like a thing about the team that you are intrigued to watch? You know, pick either side of the floor, pick a ethereal thing that's not tied to the basketball at all. What you got as far as, you know, team trends that you're keeping an eye on over these next 20 games to indicate the health of said team?
I mean, I feel like we've outlined so many of them already, right? I think consistency has been the main one for me for probably since like the start of the season, right? When you look at everything is so middling, and like it's not middling in a way that feels awful anymore, but it is middling in a way that doesn't necessarily feel progressive. So, you know, if this season is a learning curve and you want to come out much better than the team that stepped into it, I'm not that confident that they are moving toward that goal as not swiftly, because it's going to take time, but just, yeah, as consistently, to use that word again, as they could be. So I think that's a trend to watch. I think everything else at this time last year was a bit worrisome or setting off alarm bells in my head, you know, like team energy and kind of mood around the team really plummeting. That's not there. Everybody is in really good spirits, you know. People around the team are saying if you don't pay attention to social media, which they don't, the vibes feel good. Like things feel really different, like noticeably different from the last few seasons. So I'll take them at their word. They're around the team a lot more than I am. But yeah, I think consistency probably, and also just like locking in a bit more. There's still too many times when, whether it's on the defensive or offensive end of the floor, a couple of guys look out of step or just like straight up lost mid play.
Yeah, I think just sort of the big picture stuff as far as like the two ends of the floor that you play in basketball. The offense, there has been like a pretty steady uptick of late in terms of their production in the half court. That's going to be, I think, a big bellwether for how this team's performing, right? Obviously, like they're 26th right now in half court offense. That's better than being 30th or 29th, which they were for quite some time. But there's still got to be some growth there. You're still behind the San Antonio Spurs in half court offense. That's not a place you want to be if you want to be serious. Like there's got to be, I think, and look, I think they stand a chance of showing that growth because they're clearly kind of getting a little bit more ingratiated into the system day by day. Like there's I think quite a learning curve here. And then also I think on defense, like they've been a little bit slipping it lately, right? They're out of the top 10. They're 11th on cleaning the glass right now. I think they're even worse on NBA.com, you know, when they cleaning the glass factors out garbage time. So take that for what it's worth. You know, they've got to be this team. Like what was the thing we said coming into the year? They have to be like an elite defense in order to prop up this offense. That's just the way it's got to be. I was very bullish on them being a top 5 defense. I still think talent wise, they have the wherewithal to get there, but there have been a lot of breakdowns. There have been just some sort of like games where they just seem to, like we talked about with the Knicks game with Oren on Monday, they were seemingly flabbergasted by the concept of sending a double and then rotating on the back end to go contest a 3, which was a thing they did with aplomb the previous 4 seasons under Nick Nurse. So that's, I think, something that's got to tighten up. And Oren made the really good point Monday about they've probably been focusing very much on the offensive side of things so far when they've had practice time, just because it is all so new and it is a pretty complex thing they're trying to pull off here. Maybe the defense got some love over the last 4 days while they were off. Who's to say? Who knows how much that'll matter? But I think the sort of the balance of the half-court offense and the half-court defense, you know, shocker. This is kind of the root of basketball, but those two things are going to be very indicative of the success of this team, I think. let's go back to players, Katie. We've kind of hit the trends. So let's talk about Gary Trent Jr. a little bit more in depth, because although while his individual play is important, I also think he's important to these team trends, especially the offense. Like when he's in there, the offense runs a lot more smoothly. There's a chance maybe he works himself into a starting lineup at some point here, if in fact a shakeup is going to come. Although that feels more like a thing the fan base is clamoring for, more than something like Darko Rajakovic is telegraphing, like, oh, we're going to change the starters. But Gary Trent Jr., how he kind of falls into these the sort of bigger picture trends and issues that the team has. Obviously, he's a free agent too. What are your sort of thoughts on him as we head into the second quarter of the season here?
Yeah, I think Gary's actually shown to be a pretty steadying factor, which is interesting. This is not what I would have had him pegged for when he first arrived in Toronto, and he was kind of content to shoot from everywhere. But now, when the offense is on and when he's making his shots and like creating shots too, I would say he's like pretty generative, of course, of offense, but like can also settle things down, which is a real thing that this team needs still. If Pascal's a bit frustrated, if he's not driving the ball, if his shots aren't falling from out, like way out, then you need somebody to kind of come in and settle things down and just be like, yeah, you know what? Like I'll make some shots for us. I'll keep us in, so that a run doesn't look like you're suddenly sliding down the side of a mountain, like the other team's offensive run, I should say.
Sure. Yeah.
And just like plugging the gap a little bit. He's shown he's pretty effective at that. I also like when he's shown up defensively. So again, like much like Precious Achiuwa, I just think there's a lot of room for Gary Trent Jr. on this team and what this team wants to look like going forward. So yeah, I just like consistency, but I think out of everyone we've talked about, I think he's actually put in the most work and has kind of changed the most in the way that we can tangibly at least see in game.
Yeah, I think we're seeing fewer of the commandeering possessions where he just kind of like, it's basically end of clock stuff where he's going to kind of take it for himself and go to the mid range and stuff like that. The threes have been there, right? He's shooting 36% from three. It's basically what you expect. The volume's been a little bit low, but his minutes are down, so that makes sense. I think, the 2-point percentage, that's got to come up. It's not been very good. We've seen some very untimely 2-point misses and stuff from Gary as well, but sort of bigger picture than just the numbers. I mean, I think one thing we have to see here, and again, this is all part of the information gathering, we got to see more of Gary playing with the main three guys.
Yeah.
We have not seen that enough. Looking at Clean the Glass right now, Scottie, Pascal, O.G, Gary, the four-man quartet on the floor. Just 70 possessions so far together this season. That does not feel like enough for 4 of your 6 most important players. And in those minutes, they've been incredible. Plus 31.4 net rating. Again, just 70 possessions. It probably equates to like a plus 10 overall in just raw plus minus. But it's like it makes sense. Like Gary Trent Jr., I think he's been asked to play in a lot of lineups where he's like the second best player. And I think that's probably too much and an unfair ask of Gary Trent Jr. Asking him to be the trigger man playing alongside better players who can create stuff for him and draw attention and leave him open on the weak side. That is a way, I think, to really maximize Gary Trent Jr. And I don't think Darko Rajakovic has done a great job of putting him into spots to really, do the thing he does. He is an agent of space. He's an outlet for what this offense does. And I think there's got to be maybe a little bit more sort of intentionality of getting him in there in lineups where he's going to be flanked by the best players on the team. So we'll see. I talked about this with Vivek yesterday, but are you in for a starting lineup change at all? Is that something you want to see?
No, I don't care.
No?
I don't know. Like, why? The whole point is to be, I think I understand the concept of more fluidity. And I understand that you want to plug in people and maybe see what they can do. But you're trying to create consistency with one group because so much is on the line for your team and also for their careers, right?
Yeah.
So that seems counterintuitive to me. But I understand why people want it.
Yeah, I hear that. I think for me, I like Dennis Schroeder. I don't think he is as important to like the whole picture long term as like potentially a Gary Trent Jr. or obviously Pascal or O.G. or even Jakob Poeltl. And so just kind of getting a different look where Dennis is not, monopolizing a lot of the possessions. And look, it's a good thing in some ways. He's had nice pick and roll chemistry lately with Yak, all that stuff. But I would still like to see just sort of let's see what Scottie can do as like the lead ball handler. Let's see what Scottie can do. Kind of trying different things on the floor. That to me is like a way to clear up the overlap stuff between him and Pascal as well to kind of test his bounds. But I also totally understand the concept of not caring about the starting lineup because we probably care too much about starting lineups when they actually don't matter all that much in the grand scheme. So we'll leave it there. Katie, anything you want to plug for the good people out there before we round this out?
I'm working on a story. So I went to the Giants of Africa Dream Big Camp on the weekend that was put on. Yeah, it was like really cute, inspiring, very nice event. But I spoke with Raptors' new assistant coach, Mary Andrade, for a while. We sat down and chatted. She's fantastic. And I also spoke with Ginners, kind of just on visions of success and how obviously the camp, but then how those things kind of translate in broader terms. Some of this has to do with the Raptors, some of it has to do with just like careers in and around basketball. So you can look for that on Dime soon.
Amazing. Everyone go check that out. Everyone go subscribe to Basketball Feelings, the best $7 I spend every single month. Your piece last week on The World Gone Crazy. Really, really good. Everyone should go check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can find me at Woodley Sean, of course. You can find us in the Discord. Link is in the description. It's free to join. We'd love to see you in there. And you can support the show by subscribing, following, rating, reviewing on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube, of course. We'll be back tomorrow to break down the Raptors Heat game tonight with our pal Jamar Hines, the god of the game recap. And we'll round up the week on Friday with something. We'll see. TBD. We love mystery in the weekly pod lineup. Friday is always a little grab bag of whatever I feel like doing that day. So that's to look forward to. But in the meantime, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you tomorrow, talking Raptors Heat. Thanks so much. Enjoy the game. Bye-bye.